Hey everyone, welcome back to Wix Fix. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Ryan. In today's video, we're going to be recreating CapFort's website inside of Wix Studio. Now, CapFort seems to be a venture capitalist company or an investment company in India, and I think this website actually looks pretty clean. And for today's video, we are going to be building it inside of Wix Studio. But before we get started, I do just want to give a special shout out to all the channel members. I really do appreciate your support. And if you aren't aware of what a channel member is, you can press that join button down below the video to become a channel member. Channel members get early access to videos just like this before they publicly go live on the channel. I typically release videos weeks, if not a month or two in advance. So channel members get to see content very, very early. But I just want to note, if you just watch the videos and subscribe to the channel, that is more than enough support that I need. But I do just want to give a special shout out to those who want to support the channel even more. It really does make a difference, and I do really appreciate it. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the video. So here I am in Wix Studio, and the first thing I want to do is start working on our hero section, and I want this to be kind of large. So I'm going to set the height to like 900 pixels. Maybe that's still even a little too big. Maybe we'll do like 800 pixels. I think that looks pretty nice. And I know for their website, they have a background image, or background video. So what I'm going to do is go to add media, and I'm going to grab this video. I'm going to bring it out here, and I'm going to stretch it. Now, one thing I do want to make sure of is on all screen sizes that this video doesn't get cut off. So I'm going to select the video, go into focal point, and I'm going to go ahead and just align it to the right, just so we can always make sure that the video is visible. Over here in the bottom left, we're just going to have a text element. So we're going to go to add text, and we're going to grab this heading 1 element right here. And all this says is, "We back founders building the future of India." And I will say we might need to adjust the sizing just a tad, bring this out just like this, and we'll place this right about here. Now, I will say for their website, they have certain words that stand out in this text element. So I'm just going to select the words themselves, and we can change the colors independently of the rest of the text inside of the text element. Perfect. And I'm going to place this like right about here. And I think that looks pretty close to how they had it on their website. And also with this video in the background, I also want to go into the behaviors and make sure that it starts automatically. We don't want it to pause. We want it to loop. And if there's audio, we want to make sure it's turned off. Perfect. Alrighty, now it's time for the next section. And this section is just going to be a little bit about the company. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and set the background color. We are going to make this one pretty long, so let's go ahead and set this to like 900 pixels for now. We can always adjust the size a little bit more later, but the first thing I want to do is go ahead and add our text element. So we're going to go to text. Let's start with a heading 2, and I'm just going to try to copy the text and paste it in. And I think that worked just fine. And what we're going to do is kind of change the text a little bit. For some reason, it's not wrapping. For some reason, daring is not wanting to go up here for some reason. But honestly, I think that looks pretty fine, pretty good just the way it is. So I'm gonna go ahead and center this text. And just like the text from the hero section, some of the words are kind of highlighted. So I'm just gonna do that here as well, just really quickly. Perfect. And then underneath that, there are some text elements. So what we're going to do is just grab some paragraphs. We'll make it about this big, and I'm just going to copy the text here and we'll paste it in. Of course, we want to make sure that we change the text to white, and I think that looks pretty good. And the last thing we're going to want to do is I'm going to copy this button that I have from the header. I'm going to paste it down here, and I'm going to put it right here. Now, the only difference between this button on their website and mine is the text is actually black on this section. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now, what I want to do now is grab each of these elements. We'll stack these together, and we'll go ahead and place it right about there. I do think that looks pretty good. And now the only thing that we have left is the little design element on this side. So what we're going to do is go to media, and we'll grab the about image. And we'll place this one right here. We'll make sure it's fully up against the left hand wall. And what we can do is just add an entrance animation. We can have it float, but we don't want it to float from the bottom. We want it to float from the left. So let's go ahead and preview it, and it comes in from the left. I think that looks pretty good. And I think if we go over to the design and just center this section here, I think this section will be done. For the next section, we are just going to have two giant boxes inside of it. So what we're going to do is change the background. For now, let's set this to like 600 pixels. And what I want to do is create our boxes, but I first want to give us like 15% margin on the left and the right hand side. Then we're going to split this into two columns, and I also want to give us like 48 pixels of spacing in between. I think that looks pretty good. And I am starting to think that this padding might be a little too much, so let's lower this down to 10 on each side. I think that looks a little bit better. Perfect. And inside the cell, all I want to do is add a container. Let's go ahead and stretch the container. For this container, let's go ahead and set the background color to green, but we're going to remove the background color. And the reason I'm doing that is because I have a plan to copy this box and paste it in this one. And this one is going to have that green color in it. And then for this one, we are going to have a border. We'll set the width to like 2 pixels. That might not even be enough. So let's go in here and maybe set this to like 8 pixels. I think that looks pretty good. And then let's add some text. So we're going to go to text. I believe this one is going to be the heading 3. And this one's just going to show some stats. So we're going to say 20 plus and then years. So something like that. We can of course adjust the size to not be this big. We can make it around 120. We'll set it to hug. And we'll make sure we place it in a box right here. Now with this box, what we can also do is give us some padding inside of it. So let's maybe do like 7.5%. I think that looks pretty good. So we're going to apply that to all sides. And then let's send this text element to the top left. And we can set this to be a responsive value and make it stretch. I think that looks a little bit better. And we'll also adjust the line spacing to maybe be like 0.8. Yeah, I think 0.8. Maybe we'll do like 0.9. I think that looks pretty good. Perfect. And then with this container, let's go ahead and apply a CSS grid. So we'll do 1 by 2. And then in the bottom grid part, we're going to add a heading 4. For this one, we're going to send it to the left and bottom, and we'll set the width to be 100%. And I'm just going to paste in some text. Perfect. Now for this, I do want to add a little bit of vertical spacing. So let's do like 48 pixels here. And what I want to do is grab this top column here and set this to minimum content. And we'll also do that for this bottom column here as well. Perfect. And now what we can do is grab the section and we can remove the height. So now we should have something that looks like this. I will say I want this to be a tad more square. So in order to do that, what I will say is this, we can see that the width is 480 for the cell. So we kind of want the height to be 480 as well. So in order to do that, what we can do is we'll set the bottom one to a pixel value. So we'll see it's 78. We know that we have a 48 pixel spacing here. So if I do the math, 78 plus 48 is a 126. So if we do 488 minus 126, we can see that the top one needs to be 362. So we're going to come over here to this top one. I'm going to do 362 pixels. Something I did not account for was the padding that we have. So if we come over here to the padding, I'm making this so much more complex, I'm sorry. But let's set these to a pixel value. So we'll know that this is 37. So what we want to do is we need to do 37 times 2, and then we do 362 minus 74, so 288. So now let's grab this row, this row, and we'll set this to 288. So now we have that perfect square, and we're going to set this 288 to a responsive value. Then we're going to set the 78 to a responsive value, and then we'll set this gap to a responsive value. So now no matter what, we will have that perfect square on all screen sizes. And then we're going to copy this container and we're going to come over here to this cell. We're going to paste it in. Once again, we're just going to stretch it. And let's go ahead and change the text. So this one's going to be 200 plus, but this text is going to be our black color. And then this text is just going to say investments. And once again, this is going to be the black color. And if we grab the container for the background, we're going to bring this up. So now we should have something that looks like this. And I think that looks pretty clean. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section. The next section is just going to be a list of a bunch of clients or companies they've worked with. For this one, we are going to set the background color to our black color once again. We're going to set the padding on the left and right to 10. And let's see if we do that to all sides, what that looks like. Honestly, I think that looks pretty good because we don't have spacing on this section. I think having that 10 there looks pretty clean. And inside of this, what I'm going to do is simply just add an image with all of the logos here. So I'm just going to stretch it. So we have that. However, if you do not have a picture that looks like this and you want to have all of your logos listed out, instead of just using a picture, what you might want to use is a repeater. So you might want to go to layout, go to repeaters, choose this repeater option here. And if I was to, let's just pretend this is a logo here. We add a logo here, we resize it. You know, this could be our logo. So you can see you can change the basic shapes for these, and you can have the different logos in a repeater, something like that. If you want to see a video on that, but more in depth, let me know in the comments below. But for now, we can go ahead and move on to the next section, which is going to list off the heads of the company, or the CEOs and the people that run the company. So what we're going to do is set the background color. We are going to need quite a bit of space here. I will say we're going to need 10% padding on the left and the right. And similar to what we did up here, we're just going to split this into a 2x1 grid with a 48 megapixel middle. And we can just set that to a responsive value, which it already was, but I just prefer viewport, just so we know it's consistent with this spacing up here that we have. And inside of this cell, what I want to do is just add a container. We're going to stretch this container and remove the background color. Now I do want to add a CSS grid, so we're going to add that CSS grid. We're going to split this into a 1x2 grid, just like this. And I'm also going to give us a vertical gap here of like 24 pixels. Actually 48 might be better here, and we'll split this, and then we'll make it a responsive section. Now I'm going to just simply add a section underneath, just so we have a little room to zoom or scroll through this a little bit more. So similar to what we did up here, I want this top grid cell to be a square. So to do that, what we can do is we can go to this column and we can set this to a viewport value. You can see it's 38.1. So what we can do is come down to this row, set this to a viewport value, and we can set this to 38.1. So now we have a perfect square here. Inside of this perfect square, we're going to add a container and we're going to stretch it. We're going to set this to our green color, and then we're going to add an image of the CEO. So we'll grab this one because this one's the first person, and we're just going to stretch it. Oops, it was not in the correct box. So let's make sure we attach it to the correct area, and then we can stretch it. Perfect. Down here, we're going to have their name and their contact information. So let's start with their name. So we'll grab some text, grab a heading 4, send this to the top left, make it 100% width. For the size, we're going to set this to like 36. Actually, I think it's 45 on their website. So we'll go ahead and do that. I'm going to paste in the name. Perfect. Underneath that, we're just going to have a little information about them. Perfect. And I'm going to paste in their little bio. Okay. And I do think I need to make this section a little bit longer, because on top of this information, they also have a little button a little bit lower that says email me. So I'm going to grab this button. I'm going to move this down a little bit lower. We'll change the text to say email me. But for the design of this one, they don't have a background color. They do have a border. So we'll set this to 2. We do want this to be rounded, and then we'll set the text color to be this greenish blue turquoise color as well. So once we have that, we can grab all 3 of these text elements. We'll stack these together. Then we can grab the section, remove the height. So now we should have something that looks like this. And now that we have our design complete, what we can do is just copy this container that we created, and we can paste it over here into this right-hand side. Then we're going to stretch it, and then we can change out the content really quickly. Like this image can be person 2. The name is going to be different as well, and so is the bio. Okay. One thing you will notice is that the sizes here are a little bit different. So let's kind of see what's going on here. For this one, we want to switch this over to a viewport value. You can see it's 38.1. If we go to the rows, we can see for some reason it did not do that. So we're just going to set this to 38.1. So now that is fixed. Another thing that I will notice here is in their design, these buttons are in the same spot and they're not here. So to fix this, what I'm actually going to do is unstack this text here. I'm going to grab these text elements and stack them together, but I'm going to add maybe 40% margin on the bottom. So we should have something that looks like this. Then we can grab this button and we can send it to the left. And let's go ahead and do that for this side as well. We're going to unstack this. Then we're going to grab both of these, stack these together, and we're going to add 40% margin on the bottom, and we'll grab this button and we'll send it to the bottom. Perfect. So now the buttons are in the same spot. I will say that maybe that 40% might be a little too much. Let's lower this down to 30. Let's do that for the stack as well. Okay. And now we can grab the section and we can remove the height. Perfect. Now I think that looks really good. Great. The next section that we are going to have is just going to be kind of a really cool graphic. So what I'm going to do is set the background color to gray. We're going to set the height to about 900. So for this section, it's just going to be like a little bit more visual. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add a container. For now, let's make this pretty big. This is going to change in just a minute, but we're just going to remove the background color. Inside of this, we're going to add a video. So let's go over to my uploads and we'll grab this video. We'll stretch it. We'll set the behaviors to automatically play, to not pause, to loop, make sure that sound is off. And then inside of this, what we're gonna want to have is a logo mask. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna grab this SVG file. We're going to adjust the size and we'll lock this proportion. And we're gonna set this to kind of like fill the container here as much as we can. I think that looks pretty good. But then what we can do with this SVG is we can place it right about there. I will say this SVG is currently at 1093. So what we're gonna do is grab this container and we're gonna set this to 1093 as well. So now we should have something that looks a little bit like this. We're gonna grab this vector art, make sure it's completely centered. And I will say we might need to make the container a little bit shorter, maybe like instead of 711 we can do maybe 709. And if we click off, we still have like the little like a 1 pixel of the video behind it. So another thing that we can do is set the top margin to -1 pixel, and then we can set the bottom margin to -1 pixel as well. And that's slowly starting to fix it. Maybe we can do it a little bit more, like maybe -5 just to be sure. It's still kind of exceeding it. So what we can also do is go to the video itself and we can add like 5 pixels of margin on the inside. And now we should be left with something that looks like this, and we don't have like a weird pixel of video on the top and bottom or the left or right. So I think that looks pretty good. I will say I feel like this is a little too big. So I wonder if can we resize it without messing it up too much? No, so it doesn't look like we can. So what we actually might have to do is actually change the vector size, and then we know it's 804 522. So let's grab the container and set this to 804 and 522, and we'll grab this vector art, make sure it's centered, and there we go. On top of that, we also have a couple other graphics that we need to put. So what we're going to do is do mid right and we'll do mid left, which these look like they're the same thing. So we'll just add one and then we can just duplicate it. For this one, it's going to be a little bit smaller and we're going to place it right over here. Then we're going to copy and paste it, bring this one to the bottom right, and we can just make it a smidge bigger. Perfect. And then we can also do entrance animations here. So we can have it float in. And I think I liked it coming in from the left-hand side. So let's preview it. I think that looks good. And then maybe for this one, we do the same thing. We float it in from the left, but then we delay it by like 0.4, just so we have it kind of a more staggered entrance. And I think it looks pretty clean just like that. Great. The next section that we have is going to be, it is going to be another visual-esque section. So what we're going to do is set the height to 900 pixels for now. And what we're going to want to add is a text mask. So what we're going to do is go to text mask, and we'll grab this one right here. We're going to change the text to say investment focus, just like that. We are going to want to adjust the text to be left aligned. We're also going to want this to be our main font here. So we're going to do bold. And then for the actual media itself, I think they have like the Indian flag waving. So we'll do that. And then we're going to make this really, really big. So we're going to have this basically span the entire width of the website, just like that. Perfect. And then underneath that, there's just a bunch of buttons. So what we're going to do is paste this. But for the design, the border is white and the text is white. So let's go ahead and do that really quickly. And for this one, it says FinTech. Okay, I'm going to copy and paste it, bring it over. We're going to change the text to say e-commerce. We'll copy and paste and change the text to logistics. And we'll keep doing this for as many buttons as they have. Okay, and some of these buttons are a little bit longer, so we'll go ahead and do that. But now what we're going to do is go ahead and grab all of these buttons. We're going to stack them together. And then we do want there to be like even spacing in between it. So let's do like 16 pixels in between all of them. I think that looks pretty good. And we'll just go ahead and center it on the page, just like that. I think that looks pretty good. And then we'll just raise up the section height just a little bit. Perfect. I think that looks great. Now for the last section, which is just a big call to action. So what we're going to do is set the background color to black. We'll set this to like 800 pixels. And all this is going to have is just a giant piece of text. We'll do a heading 3. That's going to say, "Are you a startup?" And we're just going to adjust the size. I am using a demo font for this. So the question mark doesn't look quite right, but all good. And then we are going to adjust the line spacing to like 0.9. I think that looks a lot cleaner like that. And last but not least, we're going to grab this button here. We're going to paste it right underneath this "Are you a startup?" We'll grab both of these, stack them, and then with the stack selected, we'll make sure it is centered with a 10% left margin. So let's go ahead and delete this last section here, and we'll scroll up to the very top, and then we can scroll down to enjoy the CapFort website built inside of Wix Studio. But that's basically gonna wrap it up for today's video. If you all did enjoy, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel for more Wix and Wix Studio content coming out really soon. Thank you all again, and I will see you on the next one.